Okay, good evening. Um, Tonight is apparently I'm in a slightly Saturnine mood. We'll explore a slightly Saturnine question. I just don't know whether the word is pronounced Saturnine or Saturnine, but yeah. So I'm staring at this question of, I've brought this up in a number of other videos, but I'll spell this out here again. The way that for many years, I had a lot of fire for making sure that I save the world. Uh, there's a lot of evidence that what I was doing, in part, was not just a matter of trying to make the world be good, but that I be the one to do it, that I matter. I was getting my sense of relevance and personal value from that process. I mean, a straightforward example. Well, I keep using examples that I expect are going to be difficult for people. I'll use a slightly different one. Um, the company I built, the Center for Applied Rationality, co-built. Um, one of the challenges I ran into with that one was that it seemed like most of the places of leverage that actually had was in circles. The point of that company being to try to make the world smart enough, clever enough, insightful enough to be able to see how to solve its own problems. I'm borrowing a little from my co-founder's language there. And in practice, like what I had envisioned is that we needed to work out things having to do with social infrastructure and how people deal with personal relationships and thinking about topics that are challenging to think about. But the social context of that was about a lot of people concerned about AI, about artificial intelligence becoming smarter than humans, and not caring about the things that humans care about, but then replacing humans with that, creating some really awful scenarios, most of which looked like they would involve probably killing all life. I have some opinions about this now that are quite a bit different than even when I left. But even when looking at just the AI question, one thing I noticed in retrospect was that like most of the value of the value that I had for CFAR, for the Center for Applied Rationality, was in pouring my energy into doing good things for the world. But the only place it was doing good things in, as far as I could tell, was interfacing with artificial intelligence discussions, getting people to think about AI safety. And I found that, on one level, I found that disappointing because I had a sense of that wasn't actually the point of leverage. There's some disagreement about that, but I'm like, okay. But the other thing that bugged me was that I had difficulty, me personally, being able to interface directly with the people who were involved in AI. There was something about my style of presentation or the things that I found interesting. I also I don't want to go into this too much, but there were some power politics issues that also made this difficult. But the end result was that I ended up not being able to connect with a lot of the people who, a lot of the more key players that were involved in AI. Like there was a big conference in Puerto Rico that a whole bunch of people went to that was very central, and some people from CFAR were invited, but I was not among them. So for me, there was this sense of disappointment, in large part because there's this feeling of I'm getting value from trying to help the world through my company, and the only place where it seems like there's leverage, I can't seem to touch directly. The question I was asking was not, is this working? I mean, I was trying to ask that. I was consciously asking that. But there was an emotional question, an energetic uprising that had to do with it's not creating value for me. What am I getting out of it? There's an energy in my heart that couldn't orient to this situation. So that creates a really funny incentive. And I mean, in retrospect, I think I happened to have been largely right about AI not being a point of leverage, but I didn't have the clarity of thinking about it then that I do now. Um, I, I find myself wanting to make a footnote saying, I think it makes sense for some people to think about that, but it's not. It's not a key point of leverage. I also think it makes sense for a lot of people to pour their energy into working out better medicine for people with Alzheimer's. This makes sense to me. It's also not a key point of leverage for helping the human race do something really different. It's not going to change the trajectory of how we keep creating massive problems. It won't fix the meta crisis. And I need to acknowledge and catch, this is still post-production. The way that I still want to talk about it is fixing. There's this problem to solve. It's not a point of leverage. The style of thinking that creates more problems than it solves. I want to acknowledge that there. So setting that aside. So that phenomenon, like I stayed in CFAR for about 7 years. Built the company, up to build its spine and infrastructure and its method of doing teaching, and its method of doing research for its courses. All of that, I built the foundations of all of that. And I stuck with it for 7 years. And at that whole time, looking back at it, I can see how I was pouring in sincere effort on a conscious level to do good by the world and by each of the individuals that were working for the company and that came through our workshops. And I can also see how, because I was getting meaning from the effort, there's actually this little slippery thing that would come in. Basically that I dare not win. Right? If we suppose that there's some sort of huge wave that happens through some of these social connections, that, for instance, the entire world of artificial intelligence research suddenly gets the problem that the AI risk people are talking about, and they agree and they go, oh, this is a big issue, and then they all start talking about it and saying, oh man, we need to focus on this. We need to stop developing AI in this arms race, and we've got to figure out how to do this thing right by humans, because we're heading towards a really bad cliff. If that suddenly spread like wildfire, and having seen other instances of things like this, I suspect that I would have felt sort of disappointed. Like there would have been a conscious sense of, oh, this is a good thing, but the feeling would still be there, like, oh, well, we're done in an important way, and I would look for a new problem. And this time I do mean problem. I'm referring to, if I rewind myself about 4, 5, 6 years. So, like at that time, I would have looked at it and gone, oh, okay, well, I'm glad the AI thing is sorted out, but are they going to be able to do the conversation well? and maybe they are, but maybe we need to train them. Like, I mean, we need to bring in NVC, nonviolent communication, and help them be able to have these conversations well. And um, like we, like even when they try to talk, a lot of people go crazy when thinking about AI. So we need to help them to think, right? If the energy there is a panicky, how can I still matter, rather than what's needed here. There's no way to fix that by arguing the point. Um, there's no way. In fact, it makes it worse to go, come on, this problem is real. Take the problem seriously, because I was already doing my best conscious job at the time. I was absolutely the best that I could do. It was the most that was in reach for me. I drove myself into some pretty significant states of depression. For a very brief while, I became suicidal from the amount of energy and effort that I was putting into trying to do that sincerely. So more arguments weren't going to solve the issue, the source of pain and the conflict in me, orienting to that. I suspect that this kind of conflict, this sort of issue, is a pretty significant one. I'll describe this in a bit, but it's pretty common in that circle. And I think this is very general. I see the same kind of thing in activism and in online arguments, in the way that people are wringing their hands about what's going on with the economy, the whole thing with Trump, and the way that people would be upset by it. And it's the same mechanism. The same mechanism just keeps happening over and over again. It's this problem that whenever you get value or meaning from a fight, from a struggle, then you dare not win. Depending on how much value you get, etc. But that's the basic instinct. It's the basic drive. And I see it as a very powerful subconscious force. I remember as we were approaching this last election, seeing how divisive many of the comments were for the sphere of Twitter that I can see. There were a number of people who had the attitude of, I don't want to talk to and understand Trump supporters anymore. Like, so these other people saying that, I don't want to listen to them. Like, we spent 4 years dealing with their bullshit, and now like they're just closed-minded idiots, and now it's time for them to shut up and be dominated. And it's so what's the energy behind that? And it's more getting value from having a fight, from having a villain. So the thing that I've been chewing on lately, and wrestling with, like all day for me, has been a really a strong bit of grappling with existential questions. It's carrying on from the things from yesterday. I'm getting more and more in touch with this baseline thrum of, oh, I think I see my end. But wanted to highlight something that I think is understandable, a few steps back from the frontier that I'm pushing on, that I find I'm getting really confused about, like hanging over the edge of the abyss, trying to figure out, or trying to find out what in me and gives me the power to jump. But a few steps back, this bit about self-improvement is a trap, the title I gave this. Well, I've noticed the same logic applies. Here I am struggling with this effort to understand, for instance, where choice, where free will is, and deal with the fear that maybe I have none. That's true, there is fear. But there's also this glimmer of a kind of heroism. Look at me grapple with the deepest existential fear. Look at me, how progressed I am. And if I'm actually honest with this, like there's this Protestant condemnation of pride that the West has inherited. I think it's like the corrupted echo of an actual spiritual teaching, a sort of warning. If you focus too much on how amazing you are, you're going to disconnect from the world around you, and then you will start getting these feedback loops of seeking validation of your wondrousness in order to feel good, in order to deal with the pain of the separation. But then that whole cycle is separating you and increasing the pain, and it creates this hungry ghost effect. It's not often described like that, but I think that's the basic mechanism. That's the problem with pride. The pride in and of itself is just an experience there. If I look at that and go, oh, look at how advanced I am. Look, I'm all the way at the abyss. I'm looking at the edge of my ego death. Oh, ooh, I am so advanced. And at the other end, I will have all of this powerful meaning. Meaning. Right? So there's, in saying all of that, they aren't really words that go in my head. I'm articulating a kind of energy that I notice. There is value and meaning that comes, therefore, from the struggle itself. Oh, I'm trying to open up. I'm trying to relax and be in the present moment. Oh, but it's so hard, and I don't really have choice about whether I do or not. I'm sort of, I'm a victim at the bottom of this universe where things are done to me. Maybe I have no free will. But that's victim energy, and how do I let go of victim energy? How do I unweed the patterns that are deep in my system? Maybe me worrying about this is creating some difficulty. Like it's all of this struggle. As this is meta. Meta is generally not a very good example. This is what I'm working on, so this is what's alive for me right now. If like all of that struggle, because I get some sense of validation out of parts of it, there is a reason not to win. Because if I were to win, I would stop getting the validation. If I were to stop getting the validation first, like while I'm struggling, just go, how about I stop valuing the struggle? The struggle itself would be like, this is a tool. I'm trying to accomplish something here. Let me just do it. I experience that a little bit in bits and pieces, but it's tricky. But the fact that it's tricky is an example of the phenomenon. So there's this loop of self-reference, one of the, and this is a major hallmark of these kinds of mental structures. And when I'm more rooted in stillness, and I'm able to be in clarity in a way that when clarity can ring through me more clearly, I suspect I'll end up offering some teaching on the nature of observing self-reference. That's the key of the mind. That's how all of the pieces of the mind that create problems and loops that do not interface well with truth are built out of self-reference. It's a very straightforward tool for navigating these things consciously, intentionally. I think it's valuable. And maybe a more grounded example of what I'm talking about. Look at something like, this is one of the big problems I see with something like Alcoholics Anonymous. I think it's almost certainly better than doing nothing for people who are struggling with an addiction. But the struggling with is a loud sign. Struggling with an addiction. Yeah. So, on the one hand, if somebody has a problem with alcoholism and they have a hard time acknowledging it and go, no, like 3 or 4 beers a day, this is not a big issue. Okay, I'm just stuck in the kind of denial there. Like that needs something else. That's not what I'm talking about. But and in that sense, the first step of the 12-step program. Um, my name is Bill, and I am an alcoholic. Like being able to recognize that, to reflect on, oh, I do have a problem. I am addicted. That's hard to say. I don't see myself as someone who's addicted, but I need to acknowledge this if I'm going to improve my life. And if I could put down the bottle, then I would be improving my life. And I notice I can't put down the bottle, but I claim to myself I can. Okay, I need to acknowledge this is a problem. Okay, so that step is not what I'm talking about. I think that part's just important. I want to clarify, by the way, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't think I've had 2 drinks since November. Maybe a bit more because we had 2 holidays, maybe 3. So, but the next series of it, this whole tone of once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. You are never cured. You're always a recovering alcoholic. It is a disease that lives with you. You learn how to have it as part of your life. You recognize that you do not have power over it. This I think is an interesting move. And I think there's value to this. This is something like useful prayer. Recognizing I do not have the power to choose to put down the bottle. So that means that it is not up to me. I am powerless over this addiction. I need help from a higher power. I surrender to that higher power and I ask for help. And I think that's a great move for a lot of these kinds of patterns. But the thing is that if somebody goes to these AA meetings and gets a bunch of social connection, connecting in community with this feeling of we are all recovering alcoholics, we are all in this fight together and we're supporting one another. Now you have a meaning infrastructure that is based on having difficulty with putting down the bottle. So that means you can't just win. If you actually, it's gone. It's actually gone. Being able to truthfully, like if it would be a lie internally to say, oh yes, I am still a recovering alcoholic, this is a problem throughout my life. If you could actually say, no, I'm done. I am actually free. I'm cured. But one thing that would become very clear very quickly is that you don't need to keep practicing the 12 steps. And the interaction with the other people who are practicing it, as they're trying to push you into, oh, come on, you don't want to get stuck in that trap. Who knows when the bottle will catch you again? And it's not under your power. You need to relinquish that. Like, one of 2 things will happen. One is that it'll alienate you from your truth. And you'll start to say, oh, yes, maybe I need to start. And you'll go right back into struggling with it. And then maybe you will start having a problem with the alcoholism again. The other direction is alienation from these people. This sense of, no, that's not my truth. I am absolutely clear. I'm here to support you, and I am a success case. I disagree with some of these 12 steps. Right? But yeah, no, I'm done. I'm cured. And I just want to be a presence for the rest of you as you try to reach your version of what I've achieved. And maybe some of you will, and we'll be able to look at each other and have a wink and go, yeah, cool. This is great. We're free. We can help everybody else. That would be a possible culture. But as far as I know, like I've never been to an AA meeting, but this is just like what I've gathered from conversations and media portrayals. And if this is not true of actual AA meetings, then please take the media portrayal version as the fictionalized example. So I mean the thing that I'm aware of. I'm sure that the thing that I'm imagining has these properties. I just don't know whether the thing I'm imagining is the thing that people experience when they go to AA meetings. Um, so this is an example of this recurring thing of, oh, if I am getting value from a struggle, then I dare not win. So this has me looking at all of the angles of self-improvement, self-development, personal growth. Like this hit me in Mexico. I had a very naked version of it, this general sense of, I'm fine, there's no rush. It is amazing. It's absolutely amazing to be experiencing anything, to be experiencing this. Like this is wondrous right here. And the more clearly I feel that, the more obvious it is that this is perfect. So this is leaning in the heart's direction, in the heart's voice of this. I'm getting more mental clarity about this. This business of, well, the alternative is there's something that needs changing. And like maybe there's something that I would like to have different in a future moment. But if I do that by denying what is here now, then I am actually enacting the problem of evil. I am widening the gap. I am creating more suffering for myself and certainly for other people. Certainly for myself, potentially for other people. That's actually what I meant to say there. So I'm noticing right now there's this sort of post-production, this mental put it on at the end thing that is coming into view, that is something like, if I believe or orient as though there's something in me to change, then it's important for me to ask, am I getting value from the effort to change, or from the need to change, or from the victimization that I feel for having this quality that needs changing, or from the persecutor condemning energy of the reality is a certain way such that I have to change? Am I getting value? Am I enjoying on some level that? If so, then the thing to focus on is not the change. The thing to focus on is the valuing. What in me somatically generates valuing the struggle, valuing the problem. So I can see that mentally. And then I get a little bit of a self-reference loop about, what if the answer is yes, and I can see that thing and go, this is what's valuing the problem. Am I viewing that as a problem? Or can I love it exactly as it is? Can I recognize this is true? It is true that it is here. Can I prefer this simply because it's here? That doesn't mean I prefer it to stay. That's a fiction. And it's not true that I prefer it to stay, but it is here now. Can I treasure what generates the enjoyment of the struggle? Acknowledge it. Love it for being. I definitely don't have this worked out. I have it mentally mostly worked out, but there's an energetic piece that is missing. The self-reference loop on that puzzle is resolving. It seems like part of jumping off that cliff. That's all for tonight.